They called her a nobody, a convenience store cashier who got lucky once, and never again. On the night Seo Yoon discovered the truth, Seoul was glowing, neon lights, luxury cars, laughter spilling from penthouses she would never enter again. She stood frozen outside a private hospital room, clutching a DNA report that proved her son belonged to one of Korea's most powerful men. Inside the room, her best friend smiling, her former lover, a billionaire heir, holding her hand, and the words that shattered everything. Get rid of her. The child stays with us. That night, Seo Yoon lost her love, her future, and nearly lost her son. But what they didn't know was this. A mother betrayed has nothing left to lose, and everything to take back. Seoul looked different at night, softened by neon lights and rain-soaked streets, as if the city itself was pretending not to see the secrets being made beneath its glow. Seo Yoon stood outside the luxury hotel in Gangnam, her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her worn handbag. The automatic glass doors slid open and closed, releasing waves of laughter, perfume and money. She didn't belong here. She never did. Yet she was waiting for Kang Min-jun. Her phone vibrated. Min-jun. Come through the side entrance. No one will see you. Her heart clenched, not with excitement, but with the familiar ache of being hidden. Seo Yoon walked down the narrow alley beside the hotel, heels clicking softly. The side door opened and Min-jun stepped out. Tall, impeccably dressed. His face, so calm to the world, softened the moment he saw her. You came, he said quietly. You said it was important. He glanced around before pulling her inside, his hand warm and sure around her wrist. The door shut, sealing them away from the world he was too afraid to lose. Inside his suite, the city stretched endlessly beyond the windows. Seo Yoon stood still, suddenly aware of the distance between them, not physical but social, invisible, unforgiving. Min-jun, she began. I can't keep doing this. He turned, his expression tightening. Just a little longer. That's what you said last time. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You know my family. You know what would happen if they found out about you. About us, she almost said. But she swallowed the words. Instead, she reached into her bag. The small white envelope felt heavier than it should have. Seo Yoon placed it on the table between them. What's this? He asked. Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. Open it. Min-jun slid the paper out. His eyes scanned the words once. Then again. The color drained from his face. Seo Yoon, he whispered. I'm pregnant. Silence crashed into the room. Outside, Seoul glittered, unaware that a future was being rewritten in a single breath. You said you loved me, she continued, tears burning her eyes. I didn't plan this, but I won't run from it. Min-jun turned away, pressing his palms against the glass window. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he spoke, his voice low, fractured. This can't happen. Her heart shattered quietly. What do you mean it can't? She asked. My father has already arranged my engagement, he said. The wedding will be announced soon. The name didn't need to be spoken. Yoon Hae-in, her best friend. Seo Yoon felt the room tilt. Her knees weakened, but she forced herself to stand. So what am I to you? She asked. He turned back to her, eyes filled with conflict, but not enough courage. I need time. Time. The word tasted bitter. Seo Yoon picked up her bag slowly. She had walked into this room with hope. She walked out with a secret growing inside her, and the certainty that love, when hidden, was already halfway to betrayal. At the door she paused. If you disappear, she said quietly, so will I. Min-jun didn't stop her. And as Seo Yoon stepped back into the rain-washed streets of Seoul, she didn't know it yet, but the child she carried would one day shake the world that had just rejected them. The bathroom light flickered softly as Seo Yoon stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. Her hands trembled as she held the pregnancy test. 2 clear pink lines. Not faint. Not uncertain. Unmistakable. She sank onto the edge of the bathtub, her breath shallow. The tiny apartment felt suddenly too small, the walls pressing in as the weight of reality settled deep into her chest. A life was growing inside her. A life created from stolen moments, whispered promises, and a love that was never meant to exist in daylight. Seo-yoon pressed a hand to her stomach, tears blurring her vision. Fear came first, raw and suffocating. How would she survive? How would she raise a child alone in a city that devoured the weak? Then came something stronger. Resolve. She remembered Minjun's smile when he forgot who he was supposed to be. The way he held her like she mattered. The way he once said, "If I had met you first, everything would be different." She reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over his name. After a long moment she typed, "We need to talk. It's important." The reply came minutes later. "Tonight. Gangnam." Now, hours later, after his silence in the penthouse, Seo-yoon walked alone through the rain-soaked streets. Each step away from the hotel felt like a farewell. Not just to Minjun, but to the future she once imagined. Her phone buzzed again. She stopped under a streetlight. "Minjun, I need time to fix this." Seo-yoon laughed softly, a broken sound swallowed by the rain. "Fix this?" As if a child could be erased. As if love could be negotiated. She typed back slowly, deliberately. "I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm choosing this child." She slipped the phone back into her bag and kept walking. High above her, in a world of glass and power, Minjun stared at the city below, his engagement ring sitting untouched on the table beside him. 2 lines on a piece of plastic had just torn his world in half. One path led to legacy, the other, to the woman he was already losing. And somewhere between them, a child's fate had been sealed. The rain had stopped, but the night still clung to Seoul like a secret. Seo-yoon sat on the steps of her apartment building, knees pulled to her chest, watching headlights blur past. She hadn't turned on the lights upstairs. Darkness felt safer tonight, less judgmental. Her phone rang. Minjun. For a long moment she let it ring. Then she answered. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. "At home. I'm coming." "No," she stood too late. Headlights swept across the narrow street, and his black car pulled over as if he had already known where she was. Minjun stepped out, coat damp, tie loosened. This wasn't the polished heir Seoul knew. This was the man who once held her hand in movie theaters no one from his world would enter. They stood facing each other under a flickering street lamp. "I didn't sleep," he said. "I've been thinking." Seo-yoon folded her arms. "Thinking won't change anything." "It might," he replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I can't announce the engagement yet. There's time. We can figure this out quietly. Quietly. Hidden. Again." "You want me to disappear?" she said softly. "No. I want you safe." "And what about our child?" His jaw tightened. "I'll take responsibility." The words sounded right, but something was missing. "How?" she asked. He hesitated. "I'll provide for you. A place. Money. No one has to know." Seo-yoon looked at him, then really looked. At the fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing her, but of losing everything else. She laughed, bitter and soft. "You're making promises in the dark, Minjun. You won't keep them in the light." He reached for her hand. "I swear." She pulled away. "My mother raised me on promises like that," she said. Men who whispered love at night and vanished by morning. Silence stretched between them. Finally Minjun said, "Just trust me." Seo-yoon stepped back. "I trusted you," she replied. "That's how we got here." She turned toward the building. Before going inside she paused. "If you ever choose your world over this child," she said without looking back, "don't come searching for us." The door closed behind her. Minjun stood alone under the streetlight, realizing too late that every promise he had made was already breaking. And somewhere in the darkness above him, a woman pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering a vow that needed no witness. "I will protect you, even if I have to disappear." Dawn crept into Seo-yoon's apartment like an unwelcome guest. The pale light revealed everything she had tried to ignore: the unpaid bills on the table, the half-packed suitcase by the door, the silence of a phone that had not rung all night. Minjun had promised to call. He hadn't. Seo-yoon sat on the edge of her bed, fingers laced together, listening to the city wake up. Somewhere across Seoul, his world was moving on without her. Breakfast meetings, stock updates, wedding plans whispered behind closed doors. Her phone buzzed at last. Hope flared, then died. Unknown number. Miss Seo, a woman's voice said smoothly. This is Secretary Han from Kong Group. Seo Yoon's heart sank. I'm calling on behalf of Kong Min-jun, the woman continued. He is unavailable and will remain so for the foreseeable future. Unavailable. As if he were a booked appointment. As if love could be cancelled. There has been a change in circumstances, Secretary Han added. For your own good, it would be best if you stopped contacting him. Seo Yoon's grip tightened on the phone. Did he tell you to say this? A pause. He agrees this is the cleanest solution. The call ended. Seo Yoon stared at the blank screen until it dimmed. Clean. That's how they erased people in his world. Quietly, efficiently before dawn. Her vision blurred, but she didn't cry. Tears felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. She rose, packed the rest of her belongings, and folded the tiny baby clothes she had secretly bought into the suitcase. Each one felt like a promise she now carried alone. Before leaving, she wrote a single message. She didn't beg. She didn't accuse. I won't look for you again. Our child will never be your burden. She sent it. Min-jun would read it later. After the engagement announcement, after the champagne, after the applause. By then she would already be gone. Seo Yoon stepped outside as the sun rose over Seoul, painting the sky in soft gold. The city looked beautiful. Indifferent. Cruel. She placed a hand over her stomach and whispered, It's just you and me now. And before the world fully woke up, Seo Yoon disappeared. Abandoned not by love, but by choice disguised as duty. 5 years passed like a quiet storm. Seo Yoon learned the rhythm of survival in a city that never slowed down. Mornings began before sunrise, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, kissing scraped knees. Evenings ended with exhaustion and whispered bedtime stories in a one-room apartment tucked far from the glow of Gangnam. Her son Seojin grew fast. He had Min-jun's eyes, sharp, observant, but Seo Yoon's smile. Curious and gentle, he asked too many questions and listened too closely. He noticed things children weren't supposed to notice. He asked one night, tracing letters in his workbook, why don't I have a dad like the other kids? Seo Yoon froze for half a second, then smiled. Because it's just us, she said softly. And we're enough. She worked 2 jobs. One by day at a small publishing office. One by night at a convenience store. Everyone was measured. Every decision careful. She never spoke Min-jun's name. Never watched the news when Kong Group appeared on the screen. But power has a way of circling back. One afternoon, Seo Yoon stood outside Seojin's kindergarten waiting. Luxury cars lined the street. A banner fluttered above the gate. Kong Group Children's Scholarship Visit. Her breath caught. Executives stepped out, cameras flashing. At the center, tall, composed, unmistakable, stood Kong Min-jun. Seo Yoon pulled Seojin closer instinctively. Min-jun laughed for the cameras, unaware that 5 meters away stood the life he had abandoned. Seojin looked up at her. That man looks like me. Her heart stopped. No, she said too quickly. He just looks important. But fate had seen her. Min-jun's gaze drifted across the crowd, then stopped. For a fraction of a second their eyes met. Recognition struck like lightning. Seo Yoon turned and walked away, her son's small hand tight in hers. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew this city. Power never forgets. And secrets, no matter how carefully raised, always grow loud. The collapse happened on a Tuesday. Seojin had been laughing. Seo Yoon remembered that clearly. The sound of it, bright and carefree, echoing across the playground. One moment he was chasing pigeons, the next he was on the ground, his small body frighteningly still. Seojin. The world blurred into sirens and white lights. At the hospital, doctors spoke in careful voices, choosing words like rare, complicated, and genetic. Seo Yoon sat rigid in a plastic chair, her hands locked together as if prayer alone could keep her son breathing. He needs a transfusion, the doctor said gently. But his blood type, it's uncommon. Family donors are the fastest match. Family. Seo Yoon's chest tightened. There's no father, she said. The doctor hesitated. Then it may be difficult. Night fell. Seojin slept pale and fragile, machines humming around him. Seo Yoon stroked his hair, whispering apologies he was too young to understand. She had run for 5 years. Now the truth was catching up. 2 days later, Kong Group news filled the hospital television screens. Min-jun attending a charity gala, smiling beside his elegant wife, Yoon Hae-in. Seo-yoon turned the TV off. She didn't want help from that world. But desperation has a way of erasing pride. That evening, a woman in heels and silence walked into the hospital room. Yoon Hae-in. She looked exactly the same. Perfect posture, perfect smile. Her gaze fell on Seo-jin, then slowly lifted to Seo-yoon. "So," she said softly, "this is him." Seo-yoon stood. "Leave." Hae-in smiled wider. "You always were predictable." She stepped closer to the bed, her voice dropping. "Min-jun knows." Seo-yoon's heart slammed. "He wanted a test," Hae-in continued. "Blood doesn't lie." "You can't take him," Seo-yoon said, her voice shaking. "He's my son." Hae-in's smile vanished. "He's a Kong," she said coldly. "And the Kong family doesn't accept mistakes." Seo-yoon understood then. They didn't want the child. They wanted control. Seo-jin stirred, murmuring, Seo-yoon gathered him into her arms, fear sharpening into something else, fury. Over her dead body, Kong Group Tower pierced the Seoul sky like a blade of glass. Seo-yoon stood at its base, her reflection fractured across polished stone. She had never planned to come here. Not like this, not carrying fear in one hand and fury in the other. But Seo-jin's hospital bracelet was still on her wrist. That was enough. Inside, the air smelled of wealth and control. Employees moved with purpose, heads down, as if the building itself demanded obedience. Seo-yoon stepped forward, her footsteps steady despite the storm inside her chest. "I'm here to see Kong Min-jun," she said at reception. The receptionist looked her over, simple clothes, tired eyes. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Seo-yoon replied. "But he has a son." Silence fell. She was escorted upstairs. The boardroom doors opened to a wall of men in dark suits. At the head of the table sat Min-jun. Beside him, Yoon Hae-in, elegant and cold. Min-jun stood abruptly. "Seo-yoon. You knew," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "And you sent her instead of coming yourself." Eyes turned. Whispers stirred. Seo-yoon placed a folder on the table. Medical records. DNA results. Dates. Proof. "My child is in the hospital," she continued. "And you don't get to decide whether he exists." Hae-in rose slowly. "You're causing a scene." "No," Seo-yoon said, meeting her gaze. "I'm ending one." She turned to Min-jun. "I don't want your name. I don't want your money. I want my son left alone." Min-jun's voice broke. "If the board finds out, then let them," Seo-yoon said. "Because I'm done being erased." For the first time in years, Min-jun saw her clearly, not as a secret, not as a mistake, but as a mother who would burn his world down to save her child. And as the boardroom descended into chaos, one truth became impossible to silence. The heir had a son, and his mother had finally stepped into the light. Seo-yoon had always trusted Yoon Hae-in. Once they had shared secrets over late-night coffees, laughed until their stomachs hurt, promised forever. Now Hae-in's smile was a weapon. The confrontation in Kong Group had rattled the board, but Hae-in's true betrayal had only begun. She walked slowly toward Seo-yoon, heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. "You shouldn't have come here," Hae-in said softly, the sweetness in her voice a lie. Seo-yoon's jaw tightened. "You've already decided I'm the enemy." Hae-in laughed lightly. "Not decided. Revealed. Everyone knew about you before you even stepped in. I just wanted to see your face when the truth hit." The room seemed to shrink around Seo-yoon. Her anger flared, sharp and blinding, but she forced herself to stay calm. Every word mattered. Every reaction was ammunition. "You betrayed me," Seo-yoon said. "Not just me, my son. Everything you swore was friendship." Hae-in's eyes glittered, cold. "I told Min-jun the truth years ago. You weren't ready. You weren't worthy. And I made sure this mistake stayed small." Seo-yoon's fingers curled into fists. Her son's face flashed in her mind, pale in the hospital bed. "You'll never take him," Seo-yoon said, her voice low and deadly. Hae-in smiled wider. "We'll see. Because in my world, weakness is expensive." The executives murmured around them. Some looked away. Others watched, enthralled. Seo-yoon knew the war had shifted. This was no longer just about survival. It was about exposing the truth, fighting power with cunning, and ensuring that a child born of love and betrayal would never be erased. She stared at Hae-in unflinching. I am the mother of Kang Min-jun's son. And I will not back down. For the first time Hae-in paused. The smile faltered. Seo-yoon walked out of the boardroom head high, knowing that the next move would decide everything. Seo-yoon had spent 5 years building invisibility like armor. But invisibility could not protect her from greed, power, and betrayal. The hospital bed where Seo-jin slept pale and fragile had transformed into a battlefield. Every report she received, every whispered suggestion from doctors and lawyers, reminded her that the Kang family would stop at nothing. But Seo-yoon was done hiding. She spent nights gathering evidence, emails, financial records, secret deals, proof of Hae-in's manipulations. She spoke to journalists, lawyers, and former employees who had quietly witnessed Kang Group's cracks. Her plan was precise. Her patience surgical. On the morning of the shareholder meeting, Seo-yoon arrived uninvited. Her suit was simple but sharp, her hair pulled back to signal authority. Cameras rolled as security tried to stop her. She ignored them. Her focus was singular, the child they tried to erase. The boardroom was silent when she entered. Min-jun's eyes widened, shock, guilt, and fear swirling in his gaze. Hae-in's smirk faltered. I am the mother of Kang Min-jun's son, Seo-yoon announced, placing a thick folder on the table. And this is what you did to us. She opened the folder. Screens displayed confidential documents, video footage, and correspondence proving illegal activity, manipulation, and the lies used to try to steal her child. Gasps echoed. Executives whispered. Phones clicked. Cameras recorded every second. Hae-in stepped forward, attempting to regain control. You have no right. Seoul sparkled like glass and gold, but inside Kang Group Tower the world had cracked. Hae-in's heels clicked against marble floors one last time, but this time there was no audience to admire her. The cameras recorded the chaos she could no longer control. Executives whispered in shocked tones, lawyers moved swiftly, and police prepared documents she hadn't anticipated. Min-jun sat slumped at the head of the table, the weight of choices long ignored pressing down on him. He had watched the empire his family built tremble, not from market forces, but from one woman who refused to be invisible. Seo-yoon walked through the room, Seo-jin clutching her hand, calm and resolute. She carried nothing but truth and a mother's love. More powerful than any boardroom deal, more lasting than wealth. You destroyed your own world, Seo-yoon said softly, looking at Hae-in. Because the perfect world you imagined was built on lies. Hae-in's face fell. No words came. She had never expected that the quiet woman she once mocked would rise to command the attention of an empire. Min-jun finally looked at Seo-yoon, guilt and awe mingling in his eyes. I didn't see it, he whispered. You chose everything else over us, Seo-yoon replied, her voice steady. But it's okay. We're free now. Outside the city carried on. Life went on, unaware that inside a glass tower, a billionaire's perfect world had crumbled, replaced by the one truth that could never be bought or stolen. Love, courage, and the bond between mother and child. Seo-yoon stepped out onto the streets of Seoul with Seo-jin, feeling the morning sun on her face. For the first time in years she didn't hide. She didn't need to. And somewhere deep inside, Min-jun understood the cost of his choices, but it was too late to undo what a mother refused to lose. Seo-yoon smiled. The city belonged to no one, not even to the powerful. And today it belonged to her and her son.